What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be going through my third team for my 2026 season previews. Today we're going to be talking about the Baltimore Ravens. Make sure if you want to see me do a video about your favorite team, I'm currently just going through these in alphabetical order. I've done Arizona and Atlanta so far. If you want to see those videos, they will be on my channel. But if you want to see your favorite team, make sure you leave a comment down below. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. Looking at the offense last year for Baltimore, it was a tale of two guys who had really great seasons in Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers. They were really the two cogs in this offense that kept them as a high-scoring, high-volume team on offense. However, Lamar Jackson, it was his career-low rushing year, even in saying that 349 rushing yards at your quarterback position is always a really good thing that you can just kind of have at your disposal. But the thing that really hurt this team was just the fact that there were games that he missed, and it was really the reason why this team didn't make the playoffs in 2025, and we end up seeing changing in the coaching staff. Not that I want to pin it on Lamar Jackson in any way, shape, or form. It just is kind of the reality of the situation, and it's a pretty common theme for Lamar through his career with Baltimore. When he doesn't finish a season or when he doesn't play all 17 games, the Baltimore Ravens usually struggle. And that's kind of actually a good thing when you think about it. You don't want to be a team where you're getting better if your starting quarterback goes down. Baltimore made some additions to the interior of their offensive line this offseason. They signed John Simpson and Danny Pinter to free agent deals, and they drafted Ole Vavenga Ione in the first round of the NFL draft this year. The Ravens also made some interesting additions like Jacoby Lane in the third round. They also got a tight end in Durham Smythe, who really is just going to be replacing Charlie Kolar. But comparatively, what this team lost, which I'll get to here in a second, to what they added, you might think that they got worse offensively this year from a skill point position. Now, the Ravens lost tight ends Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, who I mentioned earlier, two guys who didn't just play big roles on the Ravens team, but they're going to go to their new free agency destination and be major points of those offenses. They lost Pat Ricard, who's just been, one of the staples of this offense for the past half decade to a decade long. The big loss was obviously Tyler Linderbaum, signing with the Las Vegas Raiders on a 3-year, $81 million deal, having one of the richest free agent contract, deals handed out to a center in a long time. And like I said in the previous graphic, you kind of look at the losses and you almost wonder if they got worse offensively. And it kind of leads me to my three storylines for this offense in 2026. There's a new interior of this offensive line in front of Derrick Henry. There's a new offensive coordinator who's going to be calling plays for Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Do we get the same old Derrick Henry as, last year he had almost 1,600 yards, and it felt like at the beginning of the year people were saying that he was on the downswing. I just think we're going to be kind of questioning the Ravens offense throughout this year unless they're just overwhelmingly good. Then there will be no questions. But if there's struggles early on, there's going to be finger pointing possibly from the fan base or just in the media in general, trying to point out who is the issue. And it just might take some time for this team offensively to get off the ground. Moving to the defense, you had two real main staples of this defense, Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith, have good years. I wouldn't say that they had great years because this defense really struggled. They were 18th in scoring, 30th against the pass. They didn't take the ball away very much. They weren't very good against the run. But part of that, I think, is just they didn't have much of a pass rush presence in last year's season. They didn't have a guy who has really stepped up, and they kind of struggled for that in all areas. They struggled against the run because of it. They struggled in the passing game due to, guys just having time to get open. It really held back the Ravens defense from being a top tier team. And you see in the changes that they made that I'm going to get to, you see what they're trying to get to with those moves. The Baltimore Ravens made some huge additions to this defense. They get Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati on a 4-year, $112 million deal. They signed Jalen Hawkins, who has kind of not been a star, I think, for the Patriots, but last year he was a really important player for that team. He was a main reason that this defense was so good, and he just, in his career, he hasn't gotten the chance to start every single year, but in the 2 years he's really had, a full season of starting. He's been a contributing player to success, and that's just something really good to add to this defense. You get Calais Campbell back as well, and you make a draft selection in Zion Young from Missouri. Another guy who over these last, you look at the last couple of years, including this offseason, the Baltimore Ravens are making a huge investment in their defensive line and their pass rush in general. The Ravens did suffer some big losses in free agency this year. They lost Draymond Jones and Alohi Gilman. Draymond Jones was really the best pass rusher on this team last year. He even suffered from the fact that there wasn't really another guy that offenses had to worry about. He was really the one that offensive lines and quarterbacks and whoever else was blocking was able to key in on. Alohi Gilman came over last year and played 12 games for this defense, and he was a really solid piece on this team. So he's, again, another guy that's going to be tough for Baltimore to replace. But I think they did get a good option to try to replace him with in Jalen Hawkins from the New England Patriots. Now, my 3 storylines for the Baltimore Ravens defense in 2026, I already mentioned it with the pass rush when I mentioned Zion Young and Trey Hendrickson, but there's been a heavy 2-year investment in the pass rush and secondary that really needs to pay off. You look at the secondary, you've made additions like Jalen Hawkins and Malachi Starks. You've also made additions to the pass rush with Trey Hendrickson. You draft Mike Green last year. You signed Calais Campbell this year. You draft Zion Young this year. The investment you hope is going to pay off. 2 guys who you think are going to aid in making that pay off are Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver. Now, the last 4 or 5 years for Jesse Minter, he's enjoyed a lot of winning with whether it was Michigan or the LA Chargers. He's had a lot of winning. Anthony Weaver, he's been a really good defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins the last couple of years. Even when they really did not have a lot of talent on that team, he kept them competitive for a couple of years. I really think that this defense could be championship level. You look at the additions that they've made, you look at the guys that were already on the team. This, I think, has the makings of a top 5 caliber defense, and a defense that could really help take some of the pressure off of the offense's shoulders, because like I said when I was talking about the offense, they could have some tough time getting off the ground early in the season with everything that's new on their own side of the ball. And so it'll help the offense not just, it won't score in points, obviously, but it'll help the offense not have to burden or not have to shoulder so much of the burden. And when you look at the schedule for Baltimore, it's kind of built to be a year where they could afford offensively to, I don't want to say struggle, but they can afford to take some time getting off the ground. Like I said, you don't see a team that even had a winning record until week 8 when you go to Buffalo. Now that's a really tough game to go to, and it starts a really tough stretch where you see 5 straight playoff teams before a bye, and 3 of those games are on the road. And it just, like I said, it's a tough season where if you do struggle and lose some games, it might be tough for Baltimore to, gain that ground back once they get into the tougher part of their schedule. But I think it looks like the typical type of season where a team who is talented offensively might struggle to get off the ground early, but their defense is going to win them some games and keep them at the top of either their division or the conference as a whole. Which is why I think, at worst, this team is probably a playoff team. They win probably some games early on where they might struggle offensively, and you could maybe even say that early in the season is when they're at their worst this year. Just kind of speaking in a hypothetical standpoint, you could easily see looking at the end of 2026 being like, we struggled early, but we kind of found our footing and we made the playoffs. We, possibly win a game on the road, or if the AFC North is bad, like it very well could be, maybe 9-8 is still enough for them to win the division. I think at the top of the realm of possibilities for this team, it could finally be the year for them to win a Super Bowl. We've seen a new Super Bowl winner, it feels like every year for the last 5 or 6 years now. And I think Baltimore could finally be that team where everything just kind of clicks and they have a run at the end of the year. Maybe they're just like 10-3 going into the last stretch of games when they see Pittsburgh a couple of times, where they're not only just playing well, they're playing confident, and they're going into a playoff run where they feel like they're the best team in the NFL. You really could see that being a possibility for this Baltimore team. And I think that's even keeping it at a possibility that offensively they're not great early on. If they lose 1 or 2 games early on, we could still see this team rattle off 8 or 9 straight wins against that somewhat weaker schedule in the beginning of the year, leading into a somewhat difficult but not terribly overbearing schedule through the midway point and through the end of the season. That's going to be it for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure if you want to see me do a video about your favorite team, you leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.